And
they had an affair. It's questionable how long the actual sexual relationship went on.
I think that's right. I suspect it was quite short.
I think it was short-lived.
Actually.
I mean, I suspect the fact of the matter was that they both enjoyed a kind of, basically a kind of cruising together, a kind of de haut en bas sexual activity.
Let's gallop as fast as we can through the court case. Wilde made the great mistake of deciding to sue the Marquess of Queensberry for suggesting that he was gay. Now, I've variously heard it said that Wilde had no choice but to sue, and if he hadn't sued, people would have assumed the libel was true, and heard it said that it was the biggest mistake Wilde ever made. What do you think, Franny?
I think that's wrong, because the libel was a fairly local one. It was on a card in a club. Now, OK, the porter who took the card would have seen it. No doubt there would have been whispers in the club. Perhaps it
something
would have
in the Pall Mall
out.
Gazette.
I don't think they would have gone that far. And in fact, a lawyer did actually say, if you had come to me at the beginning, I would have told you to just tear it up.
All through his work, he is leading with the chin towards this. For 20 years, he's leading towards this moment, in a sense. And he has, throughout his work, scattered these anticipations of this moment in his own work. I mean, what an astonishing dramatic moment. At the time Wilde goes into this trial with Queensberry and then the subsequent trials, his plays are on in the West End. 2 plays running at the same time. The Importance of Being Earnest and The Ideal Husband. Both huge hits, opening nights attended by the Prince of Wales, the cream of English. But it's pure Wilde. It's pure Wilde, because those plays, in my view, are some of the most insidious, clever, scalpel-like dissections of Victorian hypocrisy and society that there were. So the theatre of it, I think, overcame him as much as anything else.
It was the fact that he took it to the courts, I think.
Yeah.
I think it was the innate
I don't agree with you.
hypocrisy.
I think you've got to look at the time. We're getting into the world of jingo. The increased machismo of the late British Empire in that way. And
you think they would have got him
I
in
dare
the
say,
end?
but
Yes,
I think
do.
Franny has a point. I mean, it was when Geoffrey Archer sued over allegations that he'd been seeing
Yes, I
a
think
prostitute
there's something of
that
that.
sympathy for him began to evaporate.
And again, I think Bosie is very important in this sort of cocktail, because Oscar, when Bosie wasn't around, was a very different character, as far as we can tell from
the
Oscar when
relationship
Bosie
with
was
his
around.
wife reasserted
You know,
itself. And that's
Exactly.
what's so poignant about your book. Quite clearly, apart from the Bosie element, that marriage could well have survived.
And extraordinarily, I think Constance expected it to.
Tell us what happened to Constance after her husband's
Constance
conviction.
fled the country almost immediately. I mean, she very quickly got her 2 sons out of the country. And she changed her name to Holland, Mrs. Holland, on the advice of friends.
Which is still the family's name.
Which is still the family's name. And again, that was really to hide.
Yeah.
So she lost not only her status, her family, but their house and, creditors swarmed. But she fled and then tried very hard to have a sort of even relationship with Oscar. She visited him in prison, for example. And there is a great sense that she was prepared to see him and try and work out some relationship on his release.
He had been convicted 2 years, hard labour, wrote De Profundis in 1897, and later the Ballad of Reading Gaol, which contains the line, "I never saw a man who looked with such a wistful eye upon that little tent of blue, which prisoners call the sky."
2 years hard labour at that time in the late 19th century was no joke. I mean, this was on a treadmill. You're going on a treadmill for 16 hours a day, and, you get beaten if you couldn't get on it. Picking oakum, picking apart, rope. He speaks of having his nails broken. His health was absolutely broken and destroyed.
Well, it broke his spirit, not just his health. I mean, that's evident that when he came out, he was not the man physically, but neither mentally, that went in. He getting back to writing, trying to focus was very hard for him.
And for Constance too, Franny a really sad end.
Very sad. I mean, Constance died before her husband. She died when she was just 40. She had suffered some chronic disease, which is very hard to work out exactly what it was, possibly a gynecological condition, and died after an operation that clearly went very wrong for her. So.
Which brings me to a closing question. I've been bursting to ask this, but it seemed a little mean-spirited. Was he actually very good as a writer?
Yes, he was very good. I mean, the epigrams are superb. I mean, everybody will know at least one or two. They hold. When I wrote my version of Dorian, I simply had to translate his epigrams into modern idioms.
The epigrams are fantastic,
yes.
But I really wonder whether quite a lot of his talent isn't just a string of brilliant epigrams held together by not too clever script writing. He had a talent for surprising juxtaposition.
I think he casts a long shadow. I mean,
I think it's a bit formulaic. Will, you know, he puts together antitheses. You know, he hasn't an enemy in the world, and none of his friends like him. You can do that. It's quite easy. I do it in my own sketch writing.
I would
sometimes.
argue that you do it because you learned it from him.
I dare say.
No, you do not find somebody who practices that particular kind of dialectic of irony before Wilde. It's actually, it's achieved in Wilde, and it's achieved dramaturgically in the plays in a very powerful effect. They remain still in production and valid satires on the English class system
But
today,
that's partly because we all just go around saying how marvellous Wilde was. I agree about the dialecticism, but the characters, they're not in depth, they're not real characters, they're all the same from play to play. There's no real development.
But that was Wilde's view. It's there in The Soul of Man Under Socialism. You know, he didn't actually believe that most people were individuals in a very important sense.
Well, they are.
Well, that's your contention, but you have to bear in mind that Wilde was a philosopher of aesthetics and had a particular view about how culture operated, and that the reason why he makes his characters thin and poorly drawn was because that's the way he saw society render people.
Does the tragedy make him? If he had lived to a ripe old age and been sort of quietly gay like Somerset Maugham or Noel Coward, would he be as famous? And would we?
I don't think if you'd been around Cap Ferrar in the 1930s, you'd have thought Willie Maugham was being quietly gay. I'm always of the belief that, you know, I don't like tragedy, and I don't like the way that Wilde was broken in that way. I think it was a vicious, dark thing, and whatever his sins, and frankly, the person, you know, who is in a position to either forgive him or not would be Constance. It's not up to society, in my view. And my view is I would have loved him to go on to live a long and productive life. Why not?
My thanks to Will Self, who chose The Great Life of Oscar Wilde, and to Mrs. Wilde's biographer, Franny Moyle. Goodbye.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to this Great Lives podcast. Many other BBC programmes are available as podcasts. You can find details at bbc.co.uk/radio.